I still remember the first time I heard her name. It was whispered in the narrow corridors of the convent, like a secret no one dared to say out loud. Sister Agnes. A woman who had lived most of her life behind these walls, in silence, in prayer, in what everyone thought was pure devotion. But what she carried inside her soul was something none of us were prepared for. I want you to imagine this with me for a moment. A convent in the middle of the countryside, hidden between hills, far away from the noise of the world. The sound of bells marking the hours, the smell of incense that clings to your clothes, and the endless echo of your own steps against cold stone floors. That was the place where I met Sister Agnes for the first time. She was an old woman by then, frail, thin, with hands that trembled as she held her rosary. Her voice was soft, almost breaking whenever she spoke, but there was something in her eyes, something unsettling. Not evil. No. Something heavier than sin. Back then, I didn't know her story. Nobody did. We all believed she was just another nun waiting for God to call her home. But I was wrong. We were all wrong. What I'm about to tell you is something that changed me forever. And once you hear it, you'll never forget it either. Before I go on, let me tell you this. If you want to hear more real stories like this one, make sure to subscribe. This is just the beginning, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of that day. It was a cold morning. The kind that bites your skin and makes you clutch your coat tighter. The convent was silent, more than usual. The air felt heavy, like something was about to happen. I walked into the chapel, as I always did before sunrise. The candles were lit, their flames trembling as if the wind had managed to sneak inside. That's when I saw her. Sister Agnes, kneeling alone in the front pew. Her hands were gripping the rosary so hard that her knuckles were white. Her lips were moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. I didn't want to interrupt, but there was something about the way she prayed that kept me frozen in place. It wasn't the calm prayer of someone at peace. It was desperate, almost like a plea. And then, it happened. She turned around slowly, and when her eyes met mine, I felt something I still can't explain. Her gaze was hollow, empty, yet full of something unspeakable. She smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was the kind of smile that hides pain so deep you can't even imagine. And then she said my name. Father Thomas. Her voice cracked, like it hadn't been used in years. Please. I need to speak to you. I walked closer, my steps echoing in the silence of the chapel. She looked so fragile, like a porcelain doll that could break at any second. I sat beside her, and for a moment, we just stared at the altar. That's when she whispered, "It's time." At first, I didn't understand. "Time for what, sister?" I asked. She lowered her head, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "For the truth," she said. "Before I leave this world, I need to tell someone what I've done." My heart skipped a beat. Her words felt like a shadow creeping into the room. I thought it would be a small confession. Maybe something from her youth, a broken vow, a sin she never dared to speak of. But what she revealed to me that day, it was darker than anything I could have imagined. Before she said another word, she reached out and grabbed my hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling. She looked into my eyes, and for a second, I swear, I saw fear. Not fear of dying. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of her secret dying with her. She leaned closer and whispered. It all started the night the bells rang at midnight. And that was the beginning of the most disturbing confession I have ever heard in my life. When she said those words, it all started the night the bells rang at midnight, I felt something deep inside me twist. The bells of our convent never rang at midnight. Never. It wasn't part of our routine. It wasn't part of our rule. Midnight was silence. Midnight was prayer behind closed doors. So why would they have rung that night? I didn't ask her right away. I just looked at her, waiting for her to go on. But Sister Agnes, she hesitated. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she might back out. Her lips trembled like someone standing on the edge of a cliff, wondering if they should jump. And then she spoke. It was years ago, she whispered, her voice so soft I had to lean closer to hear. I was young then, full of faith, full of dreams. I thought God had chosen me for something special. Her words pierced the silence like a blade. And then she smiled bitterly, as if mocking herself. But that night, she continued, I realized I wasn't chosen. I was cursed. Her hands gripped the rosary tighter, and I saw her knuckles turning pale again. She stared at the floor as if the shadows were moving there, pulling her back into that memory. It was winter, she said. The coldest winter I had ever known. The kind that seeps into your bones and never lets go. The convent was asleep. Every door was locked, every light extinguished. But then, the bells rang. She paused. Her breathing became heavier, uneven. At first, I thought it was a dream. I woke up in the darkness, hearing that sound, dong, 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 12 times. Midnight. And I knew something was wrong. Because those bells, Father, they only rang for death. Her words hit me like a gust of icy wind. Bells for death. I had never heard of such a tradition in this convent, but I didn't interrupt her. I couldn't. Her voice carried something that demanded silence. I got out of bed, she continued. My bare feet touched the cold stone floor, and I felt something. A chill, yes, but also eyes watching me. I can't explain it, but I felt it. Like someone, or something, was waiting for me beyond the shadows. She swallowed hard before speaking again. I walked down the corridor. It was so quiet. Too quiet. No sound of breathing, no whispers, no footsteps but mine. And then I saw it. Her voice cracked. She closed her eyes, and a tear slipped down her wrinkled cheek. The door to the bell tower was open. I felt my stomach tighten. Who opened it? I asked. She shook her head slowly. I never knew. But that night, Father, that night, I climbed those stairs. She gripped the rosary so hard it looked like it would break. I climbed the spiral staircase, feeling the stone beneath my fingers, cold and damp. The wind howled through the cracks, whispering things I didn't understand. And when I reached the top, her voice faded, and for a moment, the chapel felt colder. Even though it was daytime, I swear I saw the candles flicker as if the wind from that night had somehow slipped into the present. "What did you see, sister?" I asked gently. She looked at me then. Her eyes, those eyes that once seemed hollow, were now wide open, filled with something raw, something primal. "I saw her," she said. My breath caught in my throat. Her. Who? Sister Agnes leaned closer, and when she spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "The girl." I waited, but she didn't say more. She just stared at the altar, as if the memory itself was standing there, looking back at her. "What girl?" I pressed. Her lips trembled. She wasn't from here. I had never seen her before. She was standing by the bell, wearing white. Her hair was long, black as night, covering part of her face. And her eyes. She shivered. Her eyes were empty, Father. Empty, but I swear they were looking at me. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stared. The chapel felt colder now. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. "What did you do?" I asked. Sister Agnes laughed bitterly. A broken laugh, dry like dead leaves. What could I do? I thought. I thought maybe she was lost. Maybe she was a pilgrim seeking shelter. But when I stepped closer, she stopped, her breath hitching. When I stepped closer, she vanished. The word hung in the air like smoke. Vanished. I repeated. "Yes," she whispered. 1 second she was there, the next, gone. But the bell, Father. The bell was still moving. I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone rang it. Her eyes locked on mine. "No," she said. No one rang it. The rope was swinging, but there were no hands pulling it. The sound was deafening. I covered my ears, I screamed. But no one came. No one woke up. It was just me, and that bell, and the sound, dong, dong, dong. Her voice broke. She buried her face in her hands, and I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of every word she had spoken. Finally, she looked at me again. "That was the night everything changed," she said. "The night I stopped believing God was listening. Because, Father, if that was his house, why was she there?" Her question echoed in my mind like the bells in her story. I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to tell her it was a dream, an illusion, something her mind invented in the darkness of the night. But something deep inside me told me she wasn't lying. And that was just the beginning. If you've stayed with me this far, then you need to hear what comes next. Because the midnight bells were only the first sign. What followed after that was something no one could explain. So don't go anywhere. The truth is about to get darker. After that night, everything in the convent felt different. The air was heavier. The corridors darker. Even the sunlight that filtered through the stained glass windows seemed colder, harsher. I could feel it every time I walked past the bell tower, the memory of Sister Agnes' story clinging to my mind like a shadow I couldn't shake. Sister Agnes never left her room for days. She stayed kneeling in front of her small wooden desk, rosary in hand, praying like someone begging for protection from something that had already chosen her. And then the signs began. At first, they were subtle. A whisper of movement in the corners of her room. Shadows shifting where no light should reach. Objects slightly out of place. Candles extinguished without wind. I dismissed them, telling myself that it was the old convent creaking, the drafts, fatigue. Anything but what I feared. But Sister Agnes knew better. She looked at me one evening, her eyes wide and haunted. "Father," she whispered, "it's here. It never left. The shadow. It's watching." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell her it was her imagination. But the way she said it, the urgency in her voice, told me it was real. She began writing letters. Not to anyone in particular, not to the other sisters. Just letters she placed in a small wooden box under her bed. "In case I disappear," she told me once. "Or, worse, in case it takes me." I didn't ask questions. I only nodded, though fear gnawed at me. And then, it started appearing. I was in the hallway one night, carrying a candle, when I felt it. A presence behind me. I turned sharply, and there it was. A shadow taller than any human should be, sliding across the walls, darker than darkness itself. No face. No sound. But I felt its gaze, burning through my soul. I froze. My candle trembled in my hand, the wax dripping onto the stone floor. And then, it vanished. I ran to Sister Agnes' room. She wasn't there. Not a trace of her. I searched the convent that night, calling her name, my voice echoing in the empty halls. And when I returned to her room, the letters in the box were gone. Every single one. That was when I realized. This shadow was learning. It was intelligent. Waiting. Watching. Sister Agnes never spoke of it directly after that. Only in whispers. Always in a way that made me feel the weight of her fear without her saying what it was. And yet, she continued her duties. She greeted the other sisters, attended Mass, carried herself with the dignity of decades of service. But I could see it in her eyes, the fear she tried to hide, the constant awareness of the shadow's presence. One night I asked her, "Sister Agnes, what does it want?" Her hands trembled over the rosary. She didn't answer immediately. Then, in the softest voice imaginable, she said, "I don't know. But it doesn't want to hurt me. Not exactly. It wants to be remembered. To have its story told. To have someone witness it." I felt a chill run through my body. "Witness it?" I whispered. "Yes," she said. "That's why it chose me. And now, it has chosen you too, Father." I didn't sleep that night. I sat outside her door, candle flickering, listening for the faintest movement, the slightest sound. Shadows danced along the walls as if they were alive. And every so often, I felt it, the gaze of something unseen, waiting, patient. The days became longer. The nights, unbearable. The shadow followed us. I could feel it at the dining hall, the library, even in the chapel. It never touched, never spoke, but its presence was undeniable. And through all of this, Sister Agnes continued her confessions to me, revealing small pieces of her past, small secrets that connected to the larger story. She told me about the nuns who had left before her, the ones who had heard the bells and never returned, about visions she had as a child, the ones that made her question her calling. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to understand. This was not just a haunting. This was a warning. A warning that only a chosen few could hear. And here's where it gets more terrifying. The shadow wasn't just in the convent. Sometimes I would feel it outside the walls, in the courtyard, in the garden. It waited, watching, learning, patient. If you're still following this story, you need to understand something. The shadow isn't a ghost. It's something far older, something that thrives on secrecy, on fear, on silence. And Sister Agnes, she was brave enough to face it, brave enough to survive it. But even she was not unscarred. And that's why her confession mattered so much. Because the shadow wanted to be remembered. It wanted its story told. And through her, I became its witness. If you want to know what happened next, what the shadow did, how it interacted with the convent, and why Sister Agnes finally revealed her confession before dying, stay with me. Subscribe and make sure you don't miss the next part of this story. Because what comes next is where fear becomes real. The days after the shadow's first appearance were unbearable. Every corner of the convent seemed to hold a secret. Every echo became a warning. Sister Agnes never left her room for long, and I stayed close, knowing that the next encounter could change everything. It was during the evening vespers that I first noticed it again. The candlelight flickered unnaturally, though the windows were closed, the wind absent. A cold draft brushed against the back of my neck. I turned around slowly, but the hallway was empty. And then I heard it. A whisper. So faint that at first I thought it was my own imagination. But it wasn't. It was calling her name. Agnes. Agnes. Soft, yet urgent, almost pleading. I ran to her room. She was kneeling by her bed, hands tightly clutched around the rosary. Her lips moved silently, whispering prayers I could barely hear. When she saw me, her face paled, and her eyes reflected a terror deeper than anything I had ever witnessed. "It's here," she whispered. "It's closer now. It knows we are listening." I could see it, in the shadows, in the corners of the room. A presence that wasn't entirely darkness, yet more solid than the air itself. It didn't move like a person. It didn't breathe. But its awareness was tangible. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, yet I stayed, drawn by the need to understand, to witness. "What does it want from you?" I asked. Her fingers tightened around the beads, her knuckles white. "It wants confession," she said, voice trembling. "Not mine. Mine is not enough. It wants the truth of everyone it has touched, everyone it has whispered to in the dark." And then it began. At first, just small things. Objects moving slightly, faint footsteps echoing where none should be. Candles extinguishing on their own. The soft, almost inaudible breathing that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Each night, the shadow grew bolder, more daring. One evening, I followed Sister Agnes to the bell tower. She had insisted that I stay close, that I must witness what she could not face alone. As we climbed the spiral staircase, the air grew colder with every step, our breath visible in the dim candlelight. At the top, the bell swung gently, though no wind stirred it. And then I saw her. The girl. She was standing there, motionless, hair dark and flowing, eyes hollow and endless. Her gaze locked on Sister Agnes, unblinking. The candlelight danced across her features, revealing a face both innocent and terrifying. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But I could feel her presence pressing down, demanding recognition, demanding memory. Sister Agnes whispered, barely audible, "Do not look into her eyes for too long, Father. She takes pieces of your soul with her gaze." I tried to look away, but I couldn't. There was something magnetic, impossible to resist. And then, as quickly as she appeared, the girl vanished. The bell stopped swinging, silence returned, and yet the weight of her presence lingered like smoke in our lungs. Sister Agnes collapsed to her knees, sobbing quietly. I knelt beside her, unsure if I should comfort her or pray for our lives. "It chooses those who will remember," she said between shivering breaths. "It is not evil, not in the way we understand evil, but it is relentless, and it will follow the memory of those who see it until they tell its story." I realized then why her confession was so urgent. The shadow's message was not for the living alone. It was for anyone who would listen, anyone who could bear the truth. And I, whether I wanted it or not, had become its witness. Over the next days, Sister Agnes shared more details with me, bits of knowledge that had been locked away for decades. Secrets of the convent, hidden chambers, whispers of nuns who vanished mysteriously. Every story connected to the shadow, every bell, every midnight hour. And with each story, I felt the presence grow stronger, more aware, almost expectant. One night I asked her, "Sister Agnes, what happens if you can't survive it?" She looked at me with eyes wide and solemn. "Then it will find another," she said. "And it will begin again, choosing another soul to witness, another voice to tell its story." Her words settled over me like a heavy shroud. I could no longer deny the reality. The shadow was intelligent, patient, and unstoppable. And for all her courage, Sister Agnes had only delayed the inevitable. If you're still listening, you need to understand something crucial. This story is not fiction. Every shadow, every bell, every whispered secret is real. And the only way for its truth to survive is for someone to hear it, to carry it forward. So stay with me. Subscribe. Witness this story fully, because the next part reveals the moment she finally confessed everything she had carried in silence for decades, and the world would never be the same again. The days leading up to her confession were unbearable. Sister Agnes grew weaker, yet her determination never wavered. Every morning she would rise from her bed, rosary in hand, eyes shadowed with fatigue yet burning with purpose. I could see the weight of decades pressing down on her, the burden of a secret too heavy for any soul to bear alone. I sat by her side as she spoke, her voice trembling, carrying the weight of years filled with silence, fear, and devotion. "You have to understand, Father," she began, her eyes searching mine, desperate for someone to believe her. "What I am about to tell you, it cannot leave this room until it is complete. It is not just my story. It is the story of everyone who has been touched by the shadow." Her hands shook as she clutched the rosary. I was a young nun, full of faith, full of hope. I thought my life was dedicated to God, to service, to love. But the truth is darker than any sin, any failure. It begins with the bells." She paused, taking a deep, trembling breath. The faint flicker of candlelight danced across her face, illuminating the lines etched by time, by worry, by experiences too profound for words. "The bells," she continued, "were not merely a signal. They were a warning. Every time they rang at midnight, it marked someone's crossing, someone chosen, someone touched." I shivered, recalling her earlier stories, the shadow, the girl at the bell tower. My pulse quickened. "And I," she whispered, voice breaking, "I was the first to truly see it, to understand it. I was the one who bore witness when the shadow claimed its first victim in our convent, when the girl appeared and vanished without a trace." She looked down at the rosary, her fingers trembling over the beads. "I tried to warn the others. I tried to prevent it. But no one listened. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel the presence in the air, the chill that pressed against our hearts, the weight of something eternal watching us." Her eyes met mine again, filled with both terror and determination. "I survived because I understood its rules. I survived because I remembered. And now, I must confess, because if I die before telling the truth, it will find another, and the cycle will continue. The shadow does not forgive, Father. It does not rest. It waits for those who hear its bells to pass on the story." I held her hands, the coldness of her skin biting through mine, yet the warmth of her presence anchoring me to this moment. "Sister Agnes, what exactly happened? What did you see?" Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered the words that had haunted her for decades. "I saw the souls it touched. I saw their fear, their silence, their pain. And I realized that it was not seeking to harm, but to be remembered, to have someone bear witness, to carry its story forward so the world would not forget." Her confession filled the room like a storm contained in a fragile glass. Each word carried the weight of centuries, the terror of an unseen presence, the truth of a mystery too vast for comprehension. "And now," she said softly, "it has chosen you, Father. You are the one who must listen, who must remember, who must tell. Do not falter. Do not turn away. Its story must live." I nodded, feeling the enormity of her words. The shadow was no longer a distant threat. It was a living force, reaching through time, through memory, through fear. And through Sister Agnes, it had reached me. If you're still listening, then you are part of this story too. You are the witness now. And what comes next, what she revealed next, is the secret that stunned me, that changed my understanding of faith, of fear, and of what it means to survive something beyond human comprehension. Stay with me. Subscribe. You need to hear this confession in full, because once it's told, you will never see the world in the same way again. The night she chose to fully reveal her confession was the darkest I have ever experienced. The convent felt alive, charged with a presence that was both terrifying and undeniable. Every shadow moved with intention. Every whisper seemed to echo with a voice not entirely human. Sister Agnes called me to her room. I could hear her trembling footsteps, but her voice was steady, commanding me to listen. "Father," she said, "you must stay with me. You must hear this. There is no turning back now." I entered her room and saw her kneeling before the altar, candlelight illuminating her frail figure. Her eyes, though tired, burned with a fierce determination. She began to speak, her voice low but unwavering. I have carried this secret for decades. I have prayed for forgiveness, for understanding, for courage. And now, at the end of my life, I can no longer remain silent. I knelt beside her, holding her hand, feeling the cold, trembling energy coursing through her. The shadow, she continued, is not a spirit in the way we understand spirits. It is older, wiser, bound to the echoes of those who have passed and those who will come. It chooses its witnesses, Father. And I was the first it revealed itself to, centuries ago in a line of unseen protectors. The girl, the one at the bell tower, she is not what she seems. She is the messenger, the reminder, the living proof that we are never alone, even in our prayers. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Her words painted images I could barely comprehend. The bell tower, the empty eyes of the girl, the oppressive presence that had haunted her. It was all connected. I have seen what it does to those who refuse to remember, she whispered. It strips them of faith, of hope, until all that remains is fear. I have felt it within me, Father, and I have survived because I chose to listen, to remember, to record what I have seen. Tears streamed down her face, but her grip on the rosary never wavered. She looked at me, voice trembling but resolute. You must understand, this is not punishment. It is recognition. It is the demand that the story is told, that we honor those it has touched. And now, you must bear witness as I have. You must know the truth, Father Thomas, because this shadow will not stop with me. It will continue, and its story will reach further than any of us can imagine. I could feel the weight of her confession pressing down on me. It was a burden, yes, but also a revelation. The shadow was not merely a spectre of fear. It was a force that demanded remembrance, that thrived on being acknowledged. And now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I will tell you everything. The names, the places, the souls it has touched. You must carry this knowledge, Father, for the world must never forget. She paused, letting the gravity of her words sink in. Her eyes met mine, and I understood the depth of her courage. She had faced the unimaginable, survived it, and chosen to reveal it to me because she trusted that I would honor her story. The hours passed in a tense silence, broken only by her whispers and the faint flicker of candlelight. Each detail she shared was more terrifying than the last, yet woven with a profound sense of purpose. She spoke of the convent's hidden corridors, the unexplained disappearances, the midnight bells that marked the chosen, and the girl who always appeared as both warning and guide. Her confession was a tapestry of fear, faith, and unwavering courage. It was a story of survival against something ancient, something beyond comprehension, yet it was also a story of devotion and hope. By the time she finished, the first light of dawn filtered through the stained glass windows. She leaned back, exhausted, her hands slack around the rosary. I held her gently, understanding that this was the moment she had been preparing for her entire life. Remember, Father, she whispered one last time, the story must live. Witness it, tell it, and never forget. The shadow, it waits for those who turn away. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming mixture of fear, awe, and gratitude. Fear for what she had endured, awe at the magnitude of her revelation, and gratitude that she had trusted me to bear witness. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning of the tale. If you've followed this story so far, subscribe now. You need to hear the final chapter, the epilogue that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about faith, fear, and the unseen forces that walk among us. The last night of Sister Agnes' life was silent, yet charged with an energy I could feel in my bones. The convent seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her story to reach its conclusion. I sat beside her bed, the rosary cold in my hands, listening to her fragile whispers as she recounted the final pieces of her truth. "The shadow," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute, "is not here to harm us, but to remind us. To remind us of what is unseen, of what is often ignored. It teaches patience, vigilance, and above all, remembrance. Those who are chosen must bear witness, or the story dies with them." Her gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the first pale light of dawn crept across the stone courtyard. I could see the girl, the shadow's messenger, in the corner of my vision. Just for a second, she appeared, and then vanished. The bell tower stood silent, yet I felt its resonance deep in my chest. Sister Agnes reached for my hand, gripping it with surprising strength. "Promise me," she said, her eyes burning with urgency, "that you will not let it be forgotten, that you will speak of what you have seen, what you have heard, that the world will remember." "I promise," I whispered, though my heart ached with the enormity of her request. Her lips curved into a faint, serene smile. "Then I can go in peace," she said. I watched her as she exhaled slowly, the life she had carried for decades slipping quietly away. And in that moment, the shadow seemed to pause, as if acknowledging her passage. The girl appeared once more, near the bell tower, her eyes hollow yet tranquil, before dissolving into the morning light. The convent felt empty and alive all at once. I was alone with my thoughts, the weight of her story pressing upon me. Every corridor, every shadow, every echo reminded me that this was real, that her story, and the shadow's truth, must live beyond these walls. Days later, I walked through the chapel alone, running my fingers along the cold stone. The bells never rang at midnight again, yet I could feel their memory in the air, a faint vibration beneath the surface of reality. And I knew that the girl, the shadow, and Sister Agnes' courage had left a mark that would endure forever. Her confession had changed me. It had taught me that fear is not always the enemy, that some forces exist beyond our understanding, and that remembrance, bearing witness, is a sacred duty. If you've stayed with me through this story, I want you to remember something. The unseen may always be around you. The shadows, the whispers, the fleeting presences in the corners of your mind. They may be watching, waiting, or simply reminding you that there is more to our world than we can see. And like Sister Agnes, we have a choice. To listen, to remember, to share. Her life ended quietly, yet her story lives on. And now, you are part of it. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories that reach beyond the veil and explore the hidden truths of faith, fear, and memory, subscribe now. Witness, remember, share. Because some stories are too powerful to be forgotten.